This interview by the Harvard Business Review is talking with Miriam Ort, and she is the Human Resources Director for PepsiCo, and it's about her opinions on HR and where it is and how complex it's become and why it is that way, and the way she is changing it moving forward in the business world. She says that it's become complex because of benchmarking and how companies just kind of compare each other's human resources departments and processes, and how they become overly complicated and saturated in their policies. And it's just because everyone looks at each other and they try and build the best and greatest practices, and it's just stacked and stacked on top of each other, and it's just become really complex and unnecessary. Her solution to this over time is the one-page talent management, which is a book that she's a co-author of, and it's a structured approach, and it's just the shortest way to get the outcome that's desired in the most simple way with the less time. And she was asked if it runs the risk of being too simplistic, and I mean, obviously she said no. Making sure that it includes the right things is the most important part, and what those things are, and making sure that you can get the right things in without adding the unnecessary things that take away from the effectiveness. She talks about how a perfect system that's not done is not a perfect system at all, and that's kind of her thinking going through the whole thing. And so she kind of breaks it down into a three-step process with her system. So she says that she starts out with the science and looking into the research of what helps with HR and what motivates the employees, and finding out what that is and what will increase their commitment to the company and their job, and showing that there's an objective in mind on both management and on the employee's side. From there, she goes to the second step of eliminating all the complexity and adding value. She just talks about value versus effort, and how you just need to find a balance between those two things and making sure that it's as efficient as possible. One of the examples that she gave is how important goals are, but a lot of companies will focus on having 7 to 8 goals, but it's been shown that it's far more effective to do 2 to 4 goals and make them a little bit more broad. And on top of that, because some companies try to do goal weighting, but this was proven to not be effective and just add complication to the process that kind of added stress level to the employees and wasn't very effective in the end. Then she has the third step in the process, and that is just taking the process and incorporating transparency into it. Just making sure that she can hold the managers accountable, and that the employees are trusting that that's happening. One of the ways she talks about doing this is performance reviews, and this kind of works on both sides, since she starts with managers to employees reviews, and just making sure that it is happening. She talks about how the question has been raised if it's even helpful anymore, and she thinks that that's obviously really sad that it's coming up, but it is a topic that's been addressed. So she talks about how feedback is really important. Even though you have these reviews, it's important to keep feedback regular and simple and relatable to the employees. And it's best to give it to them in an informal manner instead of written out and formalized in a less relatable way. If you just start talking to your employee and letting them know what you're thinking and giving them the feedback on their work, it's a lot more relatable and just helpful to the employee. But then in getting to the year-end review, she talks about how a rating scale is just overly complicated for employees, and how with companies trying to constantly change their grading scales to adapt to the other companies, it becomes confusing for employers and employees, and it becomes hard for them to actually improve what they're doing because they get confused. So just consistency in that and making sure it's simplified is just a great way to help your employees and the managers keeping everything in track. And people just need candid feedback, a simple structure with not a bunch of grading levels like, the 1 through 5 or all that stuff. It's best to just say you did or you didn't meet your goals, and here's where you need to improve. And just a good conversation in that is really great feedback instead of just a really formal atmosphere. It's best to just be able to talk in a conversation with your employees. And then they talked about her experience of how she might be doing this at PepsiCo, and she talks about, as far as the transparency goes, making sure that the managers have accountability as well. And in order to do this, they developed the Manager Quality Performance Index. This is just a quick 12-question pamphlet for the employees to answer about their managers. This does affect bonuses and the structure of that department moving forward from there. So it just gives the employees a sense of transparency in the situation and making sure that the managers can adjust and know how they're doing to their employees. It's a really quick thing. She mentions how it does not cost them very much money just because it's such a short and easy thing for the company to spread around. And because of that, it's also really effective because the employees don't feel like they're taking a bunch of time to do this. So there's a high participation. I think that Miriam Ort is on a great track here. I think that it's really relevant to the future of business because of the generation that's coming in. I think that the way it's gotten so complex is really unrelatable and inefficient with the type of business that is happening now. And I think that HR is kind of viewed separate from business, but this kind of business tactics in HR will kind of bring it back and connect it to people and business and how it's all conducted. I think this is a great way for everyone to connect in business and just make sure that HR is thought through and actually addressed in business. So yeah, it was a very encouraging and interesting interview to watch and see that things are changing even though it's a department that is viewed as not changing.